Welcome to the How Did That Work Out podcast, where we share, explore, as well as inspect internally and externally a variety of our life situations as well as others, all for the purpose of answering, how did that work out? I'm your host, Mike J.
And I'm your host, Graham.
Let's get into this. All right, so good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm doing fine, man. I woke up way earlier than I needed to on a Saturday, but I'm happy to be getting more done than I usually do on a Saturday morning.
You know, I think we're on the same wavelength. I got up very, very early myself for a Saturday morning and just couldn't sleep anymore and decided to get up and, work on some technical projects that I started on a couple days ago and haven't been able to finish. So it's kind of nice, having the morning to yourself, brew your coffee and get stuff done.
Yeah, I agree. And to not let yourself sit and get confused by it, right? To be like, wait, what? Am I supposed to be doing something? Like I ended up just like meticulously mapping out a ride that I'm going to do after we finish up.
Oh, no kidding.
Well, because of that, that horrible Texas winter we just had for a week.
Yes.
I hadn't been able to ride and still can't get on the trails. I spent all of this past week on the trails, not all the week, but like 3 days in a row, sawing trees and limbs, breaking them down and getting them off the trails.
Really?
Yeah.
So you were doing basically forest management, essentially?
Unauthorized renegade road style guerrilla forest management. Like you can see somebody has posted trailhead closed, and here I go walking in with a saw, and I'm like, let's get this shit cleared up so we can do some riding. Yeah.
Nice. Dude, that is definitely a take action kind of move right there.
Well, I mean, sit around, right? It is sit around and wait or just get shit done.
Right.
And there's been other guys out there on their respective segments, like, where they live, they're doing their cleanup and we're all giving each other little thumbs up, man, doing one. There's a group that's going to meet out behind the neighborhood today if it doesn't rain. But I got to do my ride first. I haven't ridden in 2 weeks.
So you're jonesing.
Yeah, and it's going to be above ground. It's all going to be, road top, gravel, packed gravel trails.
Sure.
Nothing, not going to be riding up the side of a tree or anything.
Well, I suspect with this winter blast, which I think was part of a polar vortex that they called it, and I think that was going to be probably our coldest stretch of the winter season. So it can only get better from there. And like you, I want to get my bike out as well, my e-bike, and start hitting the road with you again here at some point when it starts getting to be a decent temperature in the mornings. But in the afternoons, if it can stay in the 70s, I might be able to get the convertible out and shake some cobwebs off of that thing too.
Yeah, I know. I think we're stepping into that weather here. We get a nice little blink of it, and then we go into scorching desert weather.
Yeah, Texas is definitely the state of extremes, isn't it, in terms of weather?
Sure enough.
But that was good. Our winters really last, I say our winters last all of 3 weeks. We had the one real bad storm that, shut everything down. But in the grand scheme of things, that was essentially our winter, the 1 week. I mean, it got chilly other days, but you know what I mean? It was like, that was winter. It's over.
It was wildly transitional. I feel like once it went away, we got into these beautiful, beautiful blue sky days and outdoor temps. I mean, it's gloomy and cool this morning, but we did have 3 weeks prior to that. We were fully blanketed in snow.
Yeah, that's true.
So we had a weird kind of staggered, aggressive winter, if you ask me.
It snowed twice.
Yeah.
In Austin and Dallas too, right? It snowed there.
Yeah.
So it snowed twice in 1 year, which is in of itself not a regular thing. So I guess I should be concerned about global warming if it's snowing. Is that how it works?
Even if it's not snowing, I think we should be
Oh,
concerned.
okay. Okay. Because, when I think of warming, I think, hot, not snow. So I get a little wrapped around the axle on that one.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a misnomer, but things are changing.
Oh, man. So how was your week? How's your week been?
Oh, it was good. I mean, lots of work, lots of trail work, like I mentioned. Good things going on the family front, and I feel like there's something I'm missing, and it'll come up to me in a random ADD moment, I'm sure, as we're talking. But overall, it was a really good week, and very serendipitously. Yesterday, my clients got real quiet, and I had, gotten pretty caught up on work. And so I just basically hung out with my daughter all day.
Really?
Yeah. We were out in the garage working on our bikes together. She was using a rubber mallet to hammer in those little handlebar frills, that you put on bikes.
Yes.
And she was so proud of herself for using a hammer for the first time.
Nice. You got to turn in her own wrenches now. That's good.
Yeah, well, I do want to get her own set, and I don't want it to be a baby set. I want it to be a real set. I'm trying to time it with when I think she's, responsible enough.
Sure.
Well, how about you though? How was yours?
I mean, it was a good week. Kind of like you, I wrapped up my week early, and that's a great feeling. When I say early, I mean, pretty much Thursday, 2:00, I had, achieved all my objectives for the week, which was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Which means, I had the afternoon of Thursday to get caught up on some other things I'd been wanting to do, like some, technical training. And then Friday, we have a no meetings on Fridays kind of rule.
Yeah.
And so just had, a couple of back and forths with a team leader on a project that I'm helping them out with, and then it was more technical training on Friday. So it was really chill, and I love that. I'm willing to bust my ass all week if that means I get a little time back at the end of it all, because it's a nice long segue into the weekend. And so
I agree, man.
There's very little stress, and
Yeah, that one extra day, whether it's on the beginning of the weekend or the end of the weekend, it just makes all the difference. And I'm pretty, and I feel like you and I are pretty aligned on that. I'm pretty slow and steady wins the race, but I love those spikes where you get a reward. I love it.
Yeah. And for me, it ties back to the whole, I'm an efficiency junkie, right? And so, and we talked last episode about, protecting your time, and this all comes into play with that. And, when you are protective of your time and you are, selective as to what meetings you're going to attend, does it really matter? Is it really worth it? Are you really contributing? Because I see so many people just complain about how many meetings they're in. And the first question that I want to ask is, well, do you have to be at all of them? Or do you just accept all of them blindly, and then you want to complain about how busy you are and you can't get anything done, when really you probably could? Right. Do you really need to be at all 10 meetings every day? No, I don't think so. I really have a hard time believing it. Now, some, maybe. But also with the efficiency stuff, right? And that is whatever your technique is. If it's Pomodoro, or if it's just, the, deep, what do they call that? Deep mind work. I think that it all ties together really well, and that's your tangible reward, is toward the end of the week. It is just because everyone else wants to slow down too, and you're always going to have that straggler that wants to jump on an hour-long phone call on a Friday. And that now I can say, well, I'm not available. Let's either move it to early next week, or I can talk now, because they're asking me like on a Thursday. I can talk now, but Friday's not good. So the efficiency stuff, it does add value, right? Yeah. And the time protection, that, it pays back, tenfold. It really does.
Yeah, it really does. And just like any sort of mental sort of subscription we have to ways of life, there's general rules and guidelines and strong principles to adhere to.
Hmm.
But if you take a black and white approach, you're doing it wrong, right? It's contextual.
Yes.
It's case by case sometimes, or it's
Hmm.
like ease into it until you've configured it correctly for this situation and then lock it in, right?
Yeah, I think the organic, evolution
Mm.
of
Hmm.
your method is quite frankly the
Mm.
best. There's a lot of productivity methods that are extremely structured, like getting things done or GTD.
Hmm.
That thing is so complicated for me that I would spend more time trying to adhere to it than I would just getting shit done the way I do it.
Mm. Right.
You see?
Yeah.
And the way I do it is obviously an evolution of my own trials and errors, what works, what doesn't.
Right.
And so it organically morphs into this hybrid of, perhaps other techniques, but then some of your own that you discover by trial and error. And so I tend to stay away from the heavily structured, uh, groupthink that the way to get things done, is to have this complicated series of steps and evaluations to determine whether or not you're going to get something done that day. I mean, I don't need all that analysis.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
me, it's just a matter of prioritization, right? And then knowing whether or not you have flexibility on some of those, and then where you do, maybe renegotiate if you need a little more time, or just get it done and be done with it. So there is no one size fits all for sure, but I would also encourage anybody looking into any sort of efficiency methodologies, go into it with, at the end of it all, you're probably going to have like a build your own that comes from different influences. But I rarely have succeeded when I adhere to the letter, or even just closely, right? Not even like firmly, but just closely. It ends up just falling apart, and then I end up being less efficient because I'm so worried on, am I doing the technique right? So I just throw that out the window.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you've just said it, in, well, here's what I'm hearing is you don't need a to the letter methodology because you have something that works for you and it works really well. And as you're putting in the front work to try to fit into this model, you're also aware of the pains of squeezing your heel into this new pair of shoes, and you're thinking, instead of feeling this pain, I could be actually being productive. And
Yes.
that's a paradox to screw with, that you're just like, ain't got time for it. Got something that works. I dip my toe. I'm done. But, and then as you speak out to the audience, yeah, if you don't have something or you've kind of toyed with something, try a few things on. Try on a few pair of these methodology shoes. See
Hmm.
what feet. Nope. See what fits. See
Yep.
what foot
Yep.
fits in your feet, and
Hmm.
which gives you the least friction, and go with that and tweak it to fit your style.
Exactly right. And I know that some people do get scared, like if I deviate, then I won't learn a way for myself.
Hmm.
I think we should also trust ourselves that we are an
Yeah.
evolutionary being, right? We are evolutionary beings. And so we are going to adapt eventually. Um,
Mm.
I'm just probably of the age and of the experience where I don't really have neither the time nor the desire to adopt wholesale changes. Incrementals are fine.
Hmm. Hmm.
And to me, those work the best because if it's an incremental, you didn't spend a whole lot of time deciding if it's going to work or not. And if you decide to abandon it, you're not having to rework everything that comes before it and after it. It's really just a minor, removal of, or an excision of, that which doesn't work in favor of, maybe something else that does, or something else you're willing to try. But when you do it in the small pieces, it has less of a larger, derogatory impact. So, um,
Yeah, I love
you
that.
know,
Yeah, you take that little small piece in this is almost in anything you do, in the spirit of trying to do everything better each time, or not necessarily best yourself, but just refine the process, make things better, try to not get into zombie mode and just check boxes, right? Hey, here's a little thing I want to try this go round. Going to try one new thing, going to adjust one variable so I can measure its outcome. I mean, so that's just everything.
I mean, that's habits, right? I mean, aren't habits usually the things that come naturally to you and you don't even realize when they became a habit? I mean, at some point they had to have been new, but you've been doing whatever, said habit is for so long that you don't even realize that you adapted to a habit. You didn't start out with that habit. You adopted it, right? Or even evolved it. Maybe you didn't even start out the same, but the nugget, the kernel of the origin is there, and it evolves over time. So that's why I say if you let your productivity methodology grow organically, don't force it like, ooh, I've got to because so-and-so productivity guru said I have to do it like this. Right. I say let it go organically because that's what you're going to stick to, is the one that is basically, unconscious. Habits are for the most part unconscious, right? So when you adopt a methodology that works for you and let it grow organically, it then becomes unconscious and you're doing it without even realizing it.
Yeah.
And that's the most comfortable place to be, I think.
Yeah. That's where you've got your physical, your mental, and your emotional already mapped to this experience. And that stuff just goes by the wayside and you can focus on the thing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that was a good kind of a review, but also I think we touched a little more on efficiency and productivity, kind of helping with those time stealers.
Yeah, and I feel like we could even dedicate an entire episode to efficiency methodologies. We know they exist, and there's some that have bubbled up to the surface for different reasons, but it might be good to just kind of do an FAQ on those, or just kind of let's talk through the top 5, what we like or don't. I don't know, something like that.
Kind of a comparison, the pros and cons of each, and then compared to one another, maybe even who they're best suited for. Because I would think different methodologies are suited for maybe different kinds of work or different kinds of, mentalities that process information, differently. Like if you're a visual person, this might help you. If you're an audio, person, then maybe this is for you. That sort of thing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you ready to take a break?
Yeah, let's get a little refill.
All right, let's do it.
Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking the follow button now. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you so much. Now, back to the show.
All right. So we are back, got our cups refilled, and we were initially talking about methodologies for efficiency, how they vary, but also how you can perhaps organically grow one of your own without having to strictly adhere to a specific methodology. But before that, you were mentioning about how you were clearing up the trails so that you can go on your bike rides, Graham. And I definitely want to get out there as well, but I'm kind of spoiled, so I do need it to warm up just a little bit more. But one thing I'd noticed with your bike rides is, number one, you are very consistent with your bike riding, and that is admirable because that takes a fair amount of discipline to do that. But I've noticed other effects here where I've seen you. I mean, not that you were overweight before, but you just seem to be leaner. Your mind is sharp. You're always, on top of things. And I know the bike riding and the fresh air kind of does that, but really, I mean, what's your secret to getting out there every day? What's your secret to looking better? And I can notice a difference inside and out. So, I mean, how do you do it, man?
Yeah. Just thinking about where to start. As you were asking, it's really simple stuff, right? And it's strong principles. And I think you said the word discipline. So I'll back up a little bit, and then I'll back up further, and then I'll take a run and start at it. Um, I, in the show, in the episodes, I often make reference to the shades of gray in between, the binary logic, right?
Yes.
The black and white that can be really destructive and create these kind of like circular arguments or sort of like perpetual failure, because we sometimes think of things, it has to be this or it has to be that. It can't be a circumstantial version or gradient of the polar sides, right? So it's a journey, not a destination. That's something that was illuminated for me when I was like 15. I went to this trade school for the first half of the day at high school, and it was graphic. At that time, they called it commercial art, but it's just graphic design. And we all got these little pencils that said, "Creativity is a journey, not a destination." And I thought, oh, that's woo woo. That's a bunch of shit. I don't know what that means, but. As you emotionally mature, you realize this whole thing we're on is a wild, wacky journey, right? That we can control with our proactive decisions and our reactions.
Yes.
So nutrition plays a big part of why I'm able to get up at least 5 times a week. If I had it my way, I'd ride every single day for 2 to 3 hours. I mean, that would be my utopia.
Wow.
As I got older, I've learned how important it is for me to be outside. The word recreation, it's recreation. That's the structure of that word. And getting out into nature helps a person recreate themselves, regenerate, maybe. Think about basic things, sort of you're an organic piece of matter, meat sack, out in the wild.
Hey, who you call meat sack, pal?
Yeah. The way we started, there's something really primal about that I love. And so that's why I do the biking, whizzing through trees on 2 wheels, and nutrition's a big part of that. And that started really young for me, and that's the journey. There's a very long-tailed way to get to this nutrition journey that I've gone on that in the early days I couldn't control. My parents grew up in Detroit, very blue collar. My mom and dad, when they had us, they wanted to get us out of Detroit for some reasons I can say and some reasons I can't say. They moved us way out into the country. Sort of started, not in the beginning, they had to get their shit together, but we eventually, for a good run, had this sustainable farm. You could walk out behind the, not that we sustained ourselves on it, but we could have. That they had ambitions, as I've mentioned, liberal hippies. So
commune style type stuff.
Well, they wanted to make changes, but god damn, that's a lot of work. So
yeah, change is hard.
Yeah, so they did it by just kind of focusing inward, and we had the livestock. We also had the fresh garden right behind the house, vegetables, fruits, you name it, underground foods, above ground foods, vine foods. It was awesome. I learned about where food comes from. It comes from that goat that I was just petting yesterday, and it's now hanging in the garage. It comes from those beans my sister and I just spent 2 hours snapping under a tree so my mom could put it into a casserole. At the time, I didn't embrace it. It sucked. Shoveling shit and pulling weeds and all that stuff. But so when I got out of the house in my 20s, I went on a fast food bender. I ate at Jack in the Box. I ate at McDonald's. I ate every piece of garbage sorry to name these places like this, calling you out for poisoning the world.
A little judgy, aren't we?
I know. I caught I caught myself. I ate at McBlagnose and Frank in the Box. We can cut all that out. Anyway, fast food bender. I felt like I was starting to like break my body, break my system. I felt sludgy. I gained a lot of weight, especially when I stopped waiting tables and bartended and got an office job. So sitting on my ass all day, it caught up with me. And honestly, and so right then I'm about 23 or 24. That might have been one of the best things that ever happened to me, because I realized, oh, you can't cheat it. You've got to do it right. And then I turned it around and I got really, really fit, like lean, mean, what you're supposed, and I learned from that, it's what I shove in my mouth and it's what I do with my body all day that predicts how big my pants are. I mean, like I said, it's basic stuff. It's not a pill that somebody decided I needed. Mm-hmm. It's changes in course that I, along with my body communicating back to me, decided I needed. And in that journey, man, I was eating everything but clean everything, or in moderation, or with a certain amount of discipline. And then you start experimenting. Ooh, kale, quinoa. You really start digging deep, drinking aloe juice and all that fun stuff. And a lot of this is stuff from the past. So it wasn't really weird. It was almost like a revisiting all that. Oh, okay. So like our pantry growing up, dried pineapple rings was an exotic indulgence. Like, have you ever had sweet crystallized fruit?
Yes. Yes.
It's sweet, but when your other option is dried apple chips or, homemade carob or something very kid friendly.
Yeah.
You'll eat the crap out of some pineapple rings. So yeah, I was eating everything, and then I stopped eating pork. I'd eat it and I'd feel heavy in the gut, right? And then beef started getting cut off the list, and then it was just chicken and fish, and I was like, well, I'm getting kind of picky over here, but I'm feeling better. And then chicken went away, and it was just fish and veg. And you said I wasn't overweight. I was technically obese by measurement. Height, really? Weight, age. Yeah. I mean, it might have been a scale from the 50s, when every young man was shaped like an upside down triangle.
Right.
Chest out, chin out. I don't know. But that really bothered me. I was like, I'm gonna make the change. I've been sort of, dancing with it here. I'm getting close to it. Just make the jump. And I just adjusted my diet to be the vegan diet. And it's so easy these days. There's so many options that I don't even have to think about it. And I'll be honest, like once in a while, once a month, like my daughter will order she'll order a pizza, or she'll have like a burger where she doesn't eat the last bite. I'm like, let me take a little chomp out of this. And I'll eat it and like, goddamn, burgers are good. But, it's not like some like coveted secret thing that I want. It's something I don't eat anymore.
And it seems like it scratches the itch. When you have just a taste of it, it's like, yeah, okay, I remember. Yeah, it's good, but not really worth the longer term effects that you experience from that.
Yeah, exactly. And so exercising excessively, which is, or consistently, and eating a pretty clean diet. Now, there's trade-offs. A lot of that pre-processed vegan food it'll have a lot of fat in it or a lot of sodium in it. So there's, it's no golden ticket to your physical freedom or, fountain of youth. But you just got to watch for that. You can't set it and forget it. It's like all this other stuff you and I talk about, right? Like you've got to do it deliberately, pay attention, and tweak it to fit you. It's very personal, right? Like
you have to cultivate it. You have to maintain it.
Yeah.
Give it attention.
Yeah. One of my clients a couple of weeks ago just said it so well. He goes, it's like a garden. You have to maintain it or it'll overgrow and it won't be a garden anymore. It'll just be a pile of weeds.
Yeah. Well, and I know that your guilty pleasure, when we would have our coffee talks in person, I know that you had a weakness for the blueberry flavored coffee with the Italian sweet cream, although it was sugar-free.
Yeah.
That was kind of like your guilty pleasure. But I think if you did any more than that, you would experience actual discomfort if you were to, do more of a non-vegan friendly type diet, right? You had physical effects, no?
I mean, physical effects, it was mainly like heavy in the gut. Well, also after my fast food bender in my 20s, I started to learn that I had a propensity for high cholesterol. And that's really dangerous to screw around with. And so knowing that and having two grandfathers that one got laid out by a heart attack, but he recovered, and one had a heart attack and did not recover. Those kind of things are in the front of your mind. And it's like, so I can either repeat history or I can take what I know, look at my situation and make some thoughts and changes.
So I have a question though. What if you're in your 50s and you're still on that fast food bender you just talked about?
Different for everyone, right? Like that person in their 50s on a fast food bender. I'm slightly jealous, but that person might have the body type, right? Like there's all of this hereditary stuff that plays in that we don't even know about. Like, you know, there's what do they call it? The Viking curse. Where you can't, a buddy of mine mentioned this to me, like he has to eat a lot of, what was it? He has to eat a lot of some meat because he retains iron or doesn't get enough iron. You know, it's something about the body type, the genetics and the heritage and that bloodline. I'll be honest, it's also, you know, it's lifestyle. You might have a tendency toward X, Y, and Z. You have to apply it to your modern day life, right? Like, for example, people who like I'm going to eat the big breakfast, a good hearty breakfast in the morning, fill myself. That's what you did when you went and worked out on the farm for 8 hours. You had to fill yourself up because you were out there with, you know, your weird metal lunchbox and thermos and you didn't have fast food, but maybe that doesn't apply today.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm the one that's still on the bender in his 50s, by the way, and but
jealous.
But you're right though. When you do fill up with things that you know aren't good for you, it's a twofold discomfort. Number one, you shouldn't be eating it, so you've got a horrendous guilt. And then secondly, you have the effects that it does play on your body, in terms of, your body not being able to process it correctly. And so it turns into fat, and then you feel more weighed down, lethargic, bad skin, you name it, right? I mean, all these effects that come with it. And that's where I've really taken note of not just the discipline that it takes to stay on your vegan eating plan, but also the fact that like with your bike riding, your eating plan, you're all about it. You're just like, it's not even a sacrifice of any kind and you actually enjoy it. And that actually impresses me. The rest of your family doesn't eat vegan, right?
No,
Yeah.
they're omnivores.
So
Yeah.
so that's got to also maybe present a challenge or two, but you're so firmly set that it's, again, not even a sacrifice for them to eat what they eat and then you to eat what you eat that works better for you.
Yeah, I have a sort of an, I guess you might call it obsessive personality. When I'm into something, I'm really into it. And like with biking, I know it's good for me physically, mentally, my nature spirit, my spirit animal. But there's mornings I'll get up and be like, I don't want to. I just don't want to. But I'll just start getting dressed. And by the time I'm out in the garage, putting my gear on my body, I'm amped. I'm into it.
Really?
You can't listen to that self that's laying in bed under the cozy covers with 9 minutes of snooze, just a tap away. That part of you is, I wouldn't say it's like 100% toxic and it should be dismissed, but you should argue with that part of you that says, I don't wanna. The other, it's like the angel and devil little thing on one shoulder. It's like, no, just do it. Take the steps. Take one step and do another one. Put the clothes on. And there's this kind of like unspoken dialogue. Like, well, if you get to the garage, you're all suited up. If you don't feel like it, go lay back down. Like, you need to listen to yourself, but have that friction so that you can make fire.
That's very well put. And I think that people that like go to the gym 5 a.m. every day, it's that same thing. In other words, they're not necessarily in love with getting, up at 5 a.m. They're not necessarily in love with getting to the gym, but once they get there, they're all in. And, I have experienced similar feelings, maybe not with bike riding or, gym attendance, but, for me, coming from the military, I really don't get excited about a lot of physical activity anymore. It takes a lot for, if it's racquetball and if it's, riding a bike, that's fine. I can get into it, but I can also easily talk myself out of it. But there's other things that I don't allow myself to talk myself out of. So for the stuff that I think I can let slide, you almost feel like you're getting away with a little something, like, ooh, I can lay in bed and, no big deal, right? And yes, you maybe let yourself down for that day, but there's other things where I can power through, no matter how difficult, because I'd made up my mind, I'm going to get through this, or I'm going to do this, or achieve this, or accomplish this. So I guess it, just thinking about it out loud, it has a lot to do with your own personal commitment to the activity, not necessarily the lead up to it, right?
Yeah, and maybe even, this might go back to goals. We talk about goal setting a lot in previous episodes, and sometimes a goal is something you run to, and a goal is something you're not running away from the goal, but you're running away from a thing that's not letting you achieve your goal. And I honestly am doing both. I'm running away from poor health, and I'm running to, it boosts confidence to slip into a smaller pair of jeans, or you're just kind of beaming with that sort of like, not runner's high is not the word, but how you feel when you just, dang, I accomplished something. Yes. I'm feeling good. I'm ready for the challenges,
Take on the world. Yeah, I agree. And like for you, it's the bike riding, but also the better eating. For others, it may be finishing a course of some kind, a knowledge course, or a college, or some kind of a computer course, or any sort of certificate-based course that you actually put in the work. You sat through to learn, and then you studied the material, then you applied the material, and then you were able to pass the final exam, and you got that achievement, right?
And those need to be celebrated.
Yes.
The achievement in itself is recognition, but I think just a mini celebration, like if I have an awesome ride, those get celebrated. My little network of guys that I follow and follow me. Hey, thumbs up. Hey, wow, good time. What's your, so that's kind of baked in to the activity. But yeah, if it's something that you're pursuing for personal, professional, or, spiritual improvement, get the certificate, but also lock that moment and that achievement in time with some kind of, put something real positive around it to acknowledge it beyond the certificate, right?
Oh, I like that. No, yeah, you got to definitely take some time to savor it and maybe even reflect what it took to get that and what it could mean for you now that you've got it. I think we rob ourselves of that, quite a bit. And I know I talk about my dad a lot, but I remember when I was just a young private in the Army, I got promoted to PFC. And so I was excited, called my dad. Hey, Dad, I just made PFC. And he's like, great. Now, when are you going to make corporal? And I was like, can I first enjoy this? I don't maybe take the rest of the day and, not try to set the world on fire and just kind of appreciate the fact that, I did get promoted and it was an earlier than expected promotion. So that in of itself was that achievement. And so I think if we let others try to kind of take that away from us, we owe it to ourselves to slow other people down, and we don't want to always live to other people's expectations. But in a way, we kind of fall into that, don't we? So with my dad, I was like, it was weird. It was like, it sat with me like, okay, don't know. Number one, number two, today is about the fact that I made PFC, it's not about when I'm going to make corporal or how I'm going to make corporal. It's about that I made PFC. And so I protected that moment. And yet I also worried at the same time that my dad would think I'm less of a go-getter, even though I got my first, promotion, earlier than expected. Turned out I got my second promotion earlier than expected as well, but it wasn't because he said that, right? Like when are you going to get the next one? It was because, like you, I had goals, and I also enjoyed what I did, and so it wasn't a lot for me to put in the extra. But when you do get that thing that you have your eye on, don't let anybody rob it by trying to throw some other obstacle in your way or some other level of achievement right at you, just as you just finished the one. I mean, take time and appreciate and savor that accomplishment of the moment. Yeah. Whether it's a day, a week, or even a month, just take some time before you recalibrate and then work toward your next achievement.
That's right. Break that arm patting yourself on the back. You deserve it. Yeah, crazy.
I wouldn't go that far. Like, driving through the neighborhood and screaming, I just got my degree,
Yeah. And
not saying that, but
that parent dynamic, man, they can steal a moment. You just reminded, I'll match you 1 for 1. Nice. You just reminded me that when I was, especially in my 20s, I was really ambitious. I felt like I was doing all the right things, and I didn't have a lot of like academic guidance, and I honestly wouldn't say for the most part, if I had like the kind of like life guidance, it was reactive, right? Which typically means you're doing it wrong, you idiot. And in my 20s, I remember I'd come to my mom and usually I was trying to develop myself professionally. This became really important to me, as it probably should. And I'd come to her really excited about like a new job or a new kind of venture I was going into. And she would just look me dead in the eye, and her first reaction was to go straight for the throat and be like, "Do you have health insurance?" And it was a conversation killer. Yeah. Like that pretty much like, how do you react to that?
Right.
And I mean, honestly, I was a single guy, no kids.
Yeah.
Screw it if I have health insurance, you know, but that was her way to kind of, I won't question her motives. I'll say she was asking, are you looking at the whole picture? I'll give her that credit. But to me, she was doing exactly what you just described, at least in the way that it feels. It's like, okay, I guess I'll just go fuck off.
Yeah. It's totally robbing you of the moment. And it's funny because I know, I mean, you really opened up something here when you said that you would hope that she meant that you know, were you actually looking at a bigger picture than just the immediate, and you know, maybe she was worried you would be glorifying or glamorizing the positives without really looking at, okay, but here's the harsh realities, right? But there's a time and a place, and
yeah, don't lead with it.
Yeah,
get into it.
Give a high five, you know, give a high five or a hug or, hey, I'm proud of you. And then, you know, maybe a little bit later, you know, not even the same day, just go, you know what? I was just wondering, do you have health insurance, you know, covered? Cause, you know, I mean, it's great. There's just always a right way and a wrong way. And I think when it comes to family, we think we don't need those same buffers that we would give to a complete stranger. Right. I mean, you know, when I was growing up, I was a hopeless romantic growing up, and I wanted to be an artist, and I wanted to be an artist back when you could actually create art, you know, by hand, you know, painting and drawing and, you know, things of that, you know, even, you know, pottery or, you know, sculpture. Now everything can be done by computer and 3D
little
printers.
Little one-hitter pipes in your ceramics class.
I never did that. I held a security clearance in the Army, so I had to stay clean my whole high school career. But in any case, though, I mean, well before high school, I mean, gosh, middle school, I knew I wanted to be an artist and I wanted to study in France, and I wanted to be an artist, more so like a graphic illustrator. I mean, album covers, book covers, concept art, you know, you name it. And every time I'd say that out loud, I have a grandfather. He's still with us. But I'd say, yeah, I'm going to be an artist. And he'd be like, you know, there's a lot of starving artists out there. Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. What does that mean?
You know,
right.
I mean, I'm a kid, I'm in middle school, right? And you want to bring this, you know, this kid down with a lot of starving artists. Okay. So what does that mean? I'm going to be one. You hope I'm not one of them, or you'd help me to ensure I'm not by supporting me. There's a lot of starving artists out there, you know. Several years later, I was, you know, starting a business, and I said, wow, you know what, Gramps, I'm starting a business, and I'm, you know, taking on a business partner. And he's like, you know, half of all businesses fail, right?
I love this guy.
Okay, so I'm hoping not to be that half, maybe the other half that succeeds.
Yeah.
You know, and it's funny that you mentioned the whole seeing the bigger picture, because like your mom, that may have been him.
Yeah.
But what I saw it as here's a kid, okay, who's reaching for the stars, and he was a blue collar guy. He had to, you know, he had to get up and go and earn his pension, okay. And I'm not thinking of pensions. I'm not thinking of retirements. I'm thinking of, you know, painting, you know, on the riverbank, you know, and I'm thinking of, you know, starting a business and having an office in a high rise and all of that stuff, right? So I'm reaching for the stars, and he is stuck in a hard reality for him, which is he's got to get up and go to work every damn day and toil in order to get his pension. So it was one of two things for me, right? Number one, it was, you know, hey, you know, get back below deck and row like the rest of us. Okay.
Right.
quit your dreaming,
Yeah.
come back and,
Mhm.
and help us row the boat.
Yeah. Get out of the stars there, sweetheart.
Yeah. Yeah. Or, more of a, this kid is bright and this kid wants to go places. Let me show him I'm smart too.
Yeah.
You see, let me show him that I'm thinking on a plane that's above his, so I can be smarter than this kid who thinks he knows it all.
That's why we don't share our hopes and dreams with blue collar folks that have been dealt life's disappointments, successes, and failures, and filter everything through that. And I'm talking about my people,
Yes,
as well.
Mine too.
Yeah, yeah, and that's why academia works, because it's the spirit of let's explore the possibilities, let's challenge that, let's look at it 10 different ways. Give me more ideas, pursue passion. And that's why that's a sacred place. And, my mom sitting at her dining room table, well, they got goddamn insurance. That's not going to lift me up, but it is going to, it did something else for me.
Well, sure. I mean, it brought you back to earth and now gave you something else you need to worry about. Instead of worrying about, being awesome, now you've got to worry about, something that you didn't think you even had to worry about because somebody said you should.
Maybe we're realizing something here, like in real time on the show, is that's why mentors are so important, because you have a passion to pursue. Get somebody who has different motives,
Yeah. Who wants to see you succeed.
Yeah, our folks are always going to ruin it for us. Let's just agree, maybe. But and it could be that 1 degree of removal. It could be an uncle, one of your parents' siblings, or even an aunt. There's all these people out there who are sort of authority figures in your life that maybe they were just waiting to be asked. I mean, I had one of my nephews ask me when he was 14. I think he was kind of trying to shape his idea of how the rest of his life was going to roll out. I think he was starting to make plans very organically. He wasn't, I don't think he was at that time a kid who, I don't think college was a given. I don't think anything was a given. He didn't have a plan. And he one day just started asking me all these questions. It was so cool. I mean, here's somebody who's trying to sort of map out his course. And he comes to me, somebody he's known since he was 1. And he didn't come just to me. I'm sure he asked a tree. I'm sure he asked anyone who had answers. But that was such a smart move on his behalf. And I feel like it was a nice growth in our relationship, from him being my little nephew to him being a young adult. And he asked, just question after question after question. It was good stuff. And I was just hanging out, I guess, waiting to be asked. You know what I mean? I didn't lead with getting in his business.
Sure. And also, as you're saying this, and like you said, this is unfolding in real time, I think it also has to do with when you seek advice or you seek mentorship, it would behoove you to do so with somebody who wouldn't be threatened by your eventual success.
Oh, I want you to be good, but not better than me. The old parental trope.
Right.
Yes.
Well, and even in my grandfather's case, right? I mean, again, he was a union guy, worked at, where did he work at? Entenmann's, and he worked at, these, mass production bakeries. And, so if I'm talking about being an artist or being a business owner, not a mom and pop brick and mortar, but, an actual company, a corporation, and want to someday be the CEO driving, the expensive car, it almost sounds like in that context that he would probably be jealous that wasn't him. And that basically for what I'm shooting for, he wouldn't have a relevance to my journey.
You're right.
But if he's thinking of the hard stuff that you don't think about, now he's trying to make himself relevant in that regard.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna want to ask me, kid, because I'm gonna know some things that you don't, regardless.
Relevant is the word. I know that as we age, especially when if we're kind of, plus or minus on the retirement age, we start to feel less relevant or significant. Like, I totally get that. And there is, I think, a smallness or a pettiness in parents or grandparents that's it's constantly kind of going like, if you're getting into something I don't know something about, that I can't control the conversation or the narrative about, then I'm going to cross my arms and treat it like a threat.
Yes. And shit all over it, shoot it down, poke holes in it.
Tell you why it's goddamn stupid.
Yeah, because you're supposed to be the smartest one in the room, right? Especially when somebody younger than you is trying to dream about what they can do with themselves,
Yeah. And hopefully you and I have made that difference, as we've kind of handed down leadership styles or parenting styles. It's like, no, the smartest one in the room doesn't shit on everyone's idea. The smartest one in the room goes, say more about that.
Yep.
Let's go. Let's keep going. Because you're giving them the tools to unpack it, explore, speak to it stronger, with more, better articulation. You're not stuttering and stammering the next time you talk to somebody about it. You've unpacked it in a safe environment, with someone who loves you.
I do that in meetings, Graham, now that you mentioned that, where I might know the answer to something. And I'm going to ask the team, well, what do you think? How do you think we ought to approach this? And let them come up with the idea, and amongst ourselves, we would debate it. And I might ask a devil's advocate type question, not to shit on it or shoot it down, unless it's wholesale ridiculous, right? But rarely is it, right? So it's like, okay, well, let's explore that and let's take that to its end. And I think that people feel more empowered when you do that, instead of you being the big pulsating brain, that cuts everything to the chase. There's still a value in letting them explore, even though you might know what the final answer really is, but let them explore and let them go down that road and that path. And then maybe if they arrive at something that maybe was kind of different than I would have approached, then I might throw out my idea. Well, what if we did it this way? And let them, and then let them poke holes in my idea,
Well, and what's nice about that is you might meet somewhere in the middle.
Yes.
You might connect your cogs with their cogs.
Exactly.
And shit starts rolling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in terms of being supportive, I have, because of those experiences, with my dad and my grandfather.
Yeah.
I still love them. Don't get me wrong. It's not like, I spit on their grave or anything, right? But basically, I've also taken that to be like, that's not how I want to be with my kids. I want to support them. If they have a dream, and I'll let them, go for it. Hey, if I can help, I'll help. I'm not going to do it for you. But, one year my youngest came home and from on leave, and he wanted to buy a car. And I'm like, okay, well, what kind of car did you want to buy? And he's like, I want to buy a Challenger, with a V8. I'm like, the old muscle car with the V8, when you're, only making a GI salary trick, huh? Okay. All right.
Can't even afford the tires.
Well, and you know what? That was me. I wanted a Mustang. It was a Fox body Mustang back then, a 5.0. That was my ideal car. And I ended up getting a 4-cylinder Nissan Pulsar because reality sunk in. But I wasn't going to shit on it for him. Not because I wanted to see him crash and burn, pardon the pun, but I wanted him to understand and explore this so that he on his own would know whether or not it's feasible. Not some old coot telling him it's not, and not even giving him a benefit of a doubt. So I'm like, okay, well, if you can make it work, that'd be awesome. I can even help you look. And so he downloaded some car apps and he's like, what do you think of this one, Dad? I'm like, oh, that one's great, And I said, what does it say the payments are? And, the payments always give you the best case, with $20,000 down and, 1.8% interest. Your car payment is only $350. Yeah, right. And so I'd let him do that. I'd say, well, what does the payment say? And it says, oh, yeah, well, it's a little high. And I said, okay. And how much do you have to put down? He goes, well, I don't really have a lot to put down. So instead of saying, do you have a down payment? Are you ready to pay, over half your salary in a car payment? Instead, I just ask him the questions that I would ask myself if I could afford something, right? Well, how much is it?
Yeah, there's a lot of healthy psychology going on there because instead of him, let's say he had to get a Geo Metro. Remember those?
Yes, yes.
Let's say he ended up getting a Geo Metro, regardless of the conversation path you two went on. He could either look at it, this stupid piece of shit, sorry, Metro or Geo or whoever the hell you are. This stupid piece of shit car is a decision I had to make because my dad told me so.
Right.
Or it's, I own this decision. I was part of it. I'm ironically proud of this silly looking little car, and it's right now the best I can do. So I'm just going to deal with this until I can afford more or better or both.
Well, let's even take that a step further because once he understood that the Dodge Challenger wasn't going to be in the price range of of an Army corporal, he then started, coming down in expectations. And so we went to go look at a couple of cars that he wanted. Again, he was home on leave, great way to spend time, with your kid, go out, look at cars, and so he, started looking at used Infinities, and even that wasn't doable. I mean, the kid had no credit, right? I mean, he right out of high school went into the Army, kind of like his old man did. And so I told him that I would co-sign for a lease for him, and I gave him a budget of what I was willing to co-sign for him. Well, actually, my wife gave me the budget. And so...
Yeah, someone with some brains finally stepped in.
Well, but here's the thing. My dad co-signed for me for that Pulsar because I was in the Army and because he felt I was being responsible and he felt he could trust me. And I made sure that if I had to go without paying something, it wasn't going to be that car. That car always got paid because he believed in me, right? So I wanted to pay that forward, and I said, okay, I'll co-sign for you because I know you don't have established credit. This will help you get your credit, but it's not going to be a Charger or a Challenger or any of them or an Infinity. It's going to have to be something within, and I gave him the max price. And I said, but if you want to go above that, I'm not saying you can't. I'm just saying that if you go above that, you're going to have to do that without my help, and maybe somebody else like your mom might be able to help you. And so we landed on a brand new Kia Forte, and it was a 3-year lease. Okay. I co-signed, and I ended up helping put some money down. So I said, whatever you have to put down, I'll double it, or I'll match it, right? So he had about $500. I threw in $500. So he had $1,000 down. And so we got the payment where he felt he could be comfortable. Because don't forget also, when you're that young, insurance is expensive. Even if you drive a big wheel, they're going to charge you through the nose for insurance, right? So, like me, when he bought his car, I'm sure it was a bigger financial hit than he realized, even though it was something he really didn't have his heart set on. But it was a new car. It had a lot of standard features that were luxury upgrades, even just 5 years ago, right? So it had everything, and it was a 4-door, not the 2-door. He really wanted the 2-door, but they didn't have the 2-door with the package that would keep the price into the range that we gave him. So he had to go for the 4-door, with a package that allowed him to stay within the budget. And it hurt because I wanted him to get what he wanted. But at the same time, though, when you introduce these kinds of limits, you're not shitting on their dreams. If anything, you're fortifying them so that when they are able to get the one they really want, they did it, not their dad. you see.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not giving them a trophy for showing up. You're showing that it takes hard work to get that trophy.
Yes. Yeah. You don't just get to join the military and, even though you see a bunch of people in the military driving, fancy cars, you got to wonder how much of their pay is going toward that damn car,
Oh man. I know like third hand, a lot of those guys just get into all kinds of financial trouble because they think
Yes.
I'm hooked up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. So lo and behold, his lease is over this July,
Mm-hmm.
and he'll have paid it off.
Mm-hmm.
Now, between that time that we got him, that we got his car, I didn't get him his car, he got his car.
Mm-hmm.
Between that time he got the car, and his reenlistment came up, he had already made sergeant by that time, and he reenlisted, so he got a nice bonus from the Army for reenlisting. And he didn't tell us ahead of time, but he went out and used that and put a down payment on a motorcycle. So what he ended up doing, now granted, my wife and her mom are all flipping out about it, oh my God, it's so dangerous. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I'm like, that's kind of cool. I wish I was a young sergeant again. I could freaking buy a bike. No, but he got himself a nice bike. He got himself an Indian, and it's a Scout Bobber, Indian Scout Bobber, and
nice.
it's a badass bike. I mean, it's not a starter bike, but he took riding courses. He didn't just take the beginner; he took the intermediate and advanced. He only rides with his gear on. He doesn't go helmet and flip flops and cargo shorts. So he does it responsibly. And I'm thinking, you know what though? He didn't get the car he wanted. So he had to deal with this 4-door, economy car, but it had Apple CarPlay, power everything. I mean, again, it wasn't a jalopy by any means. I mean, it actually had more standard features than my first car did, and my first car was off the lot too. But in any case, he on his own went and got the bike. So now he's got a car and a bike. So whatever if he's taking people around, he takes the car. If it's just him, because a bobber is a one-seater only. So if it's just him, he takes his bike. Yeah. So now he gave himself options, and he paid for those options.
That's right.
See, somebody didn't swoop in and just give it to him. Yeah. He did that.
Yeah.
Right? So when his lease is up, who knows? He might, trade it in for something else, maybe an upgrade or maybe something similar so he can kind of keep his payments. I mean, who knows? The options are many for him at this point, right? So that's what I try to do with my kids, rather than smack them into reality, with these abrupt, statements that crush dreams. Instead, I invite them to explore that. But let's explore it with facts. Let's explore it with things that are real. But I'm not going to tell you, I'm going to ask you. And then you give the answer to yourself. And by answering those questions for yourself, you then realize, well, maybe it's too soon for me.
Yeah, I think you gave him a solid set of life tools, and he might be more likely to include you in future big and small decisions rather than like go around you, because he's like, I started doing that with my mom. I just went around her. My first off the lot car was my third car, and my parents had to co-sign. I was in my teens. I had no credit. And this was here in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
It was a freaking a used Toyota Tercel, standard transmission, no frills, cloth seats, nothing. And they picked it out and kind of just like showed up with it. And the monthlies were like $200 and some change. The freaking insurance monthly was $300 and some change. So I'm in my teens staring at a $550 auto expense,
Yes.
not even touching on gas and maintenance, just
exactly.
And that was some shit, but it was character building, Mm-hmm. So what it helped me do is like, okay, so I had to pay such a high insurance premium because young male drivers between 18 and 25 or whatever.
Yes.
are the worst, so let's bleed them. And so keeping a really clean driving record helped me drive the insurance down so I could afford more car. And that's what I did progressively year after year. So 2 cars after that, I was driving a brand new 4Runner, still staying roughly within that same price range.
Nice.
It was, it was crazy. So I identify and empathize with his plight, but those are good lessons, right?
And they're lessons where he's not driving a car that's unsafe. He's not driving it off of one of these, pop-up used car lots, right? I mean, it had a warranty, or it has a warranty still. And I thought, you know what, Grant, look, unless you're a trust fund kid, your first car is not going to be a Corvette. Now, the hard part was the boys did go to a high school where, it was kind of a wealthier high school. So there were a lot of wealthy parents buying their kids Corvettes and Mustangs and you name it. Not just 4Runners, but, some of them would even drive, what are some of the fancier ones? Land Rovers. You know what I'm saying? It's like, so unless you're one of them kids, your first car isn't going to be the dream car. It's going to have to be one that you can afford to care and feed for. And then like you did, Graham, and like I did too, you kind of work your way up and you start trading. You start trading expenses, but then your income increases. But again, by the time your kids see what you've done, you've already put in decades of work and they want to just shortcut all of that. Right. So again, I don't fault them for it because I went through the same thing, but I like helping them explore, what is feasible, what's not, and let them decide on their own what is and what isn't without me telling. Because when you tell somebody, they're going to resent you.
Right.
They figure it out on their own. They're like, oh, wow, okay, I don't know how I thought I could get away with that, but that is an awful lot of money, So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Good stuff.
You ready for your break?
Yeah, let's take a little break.
All right, man.
Want the show notes for what Mike, Jay, and Graham talked about during this episode? Head over to hdtwoshow.substack.com and subscribe to our email list to have the show notes delivered right to your inbox.
All right, we are back. So on the break, you had mentioned that you're just dying to ride. I know it's foggy out, but you'd mentioned you're just dying to get out there. And on your bike and, take some trails and what have you. And it kind of reminds me of these Geico commercials about the motorcycles, right? So there's a series of commercials where somebody's on the bike and they're singing to like a White Snake song and they're jamming out while they're on their bike. And then they come back to reality and they're like at a wedding, or they're like in a dental chair, and they're looking at people weird because they were, in their mind on the motorcycle singing.
Right.
So I noticed that when it's the guys that are doing this daydream, right? And they're getting down and then they come back to reality and everybody's looking at them like they have a third eye, and then, somebody will say something smart ass like, well, you owe me $32.50, wild thing, so some woman, being a smart ass. So they had one the other day that's actually a female doing it. So she's singing, you build me up buttercup. So she's on her bike and she's singing, you build me up buttercup, and she's at a parts store or something. And so she snaps back to reality and she's at the counter of a parts store and everybody's kind of looking at her, not like she has the third eye. They're looking at her. Right. And then the girl behind the counter starts singing, picking up where she left off. And then you see the mechanic come out from behind the car singing along, into his wrench. It's like, so why is it when the guys do it, right? They're complete and utter idiots. But when the girl does it, the whole block wants to sing.
Let's do it.
What the hell is it with that?
You can't have spontaneous moments of emotion. You're a man.
You're a man.
You're not allowed.
And you're just weird.
Yeah.
But if a girl does it,
Yeah, well, when you become a certain age, you're public enemy number one.
I just thought it was so funny. And I had to point it out to my wife. I go, do you believe this? And it didn't click. And I said, everyone's singing and everyone's happy. But when the guy does it, everyone's looking at him like, dude, really? So anyway,
there's a channel that shows like the old, I guess they're sitcoms. It's like All in the Family, and then that spin-off show that Archie Bunker went to do,
Yeah.
and like Alice, with Mel's Diner. Like those
Yes.
real old, obscure, maybe under-celebrated. But
Definitely.
wow, the stuff that you can't say things like that to people anymore.
Exactly. And frankly, I'm surprised they're still allowed to be seen.
Yeah, I know. And they knowingly were tackling difficult topics, but with
on purpose.
On purpose, but with a time sealed vernacular that doesn't carry over.
Yeah, exactly. I'm even seeing reruns from even like 4 or 5 years ago. My wife loves 2.5 Men, so we're watching 2.5 Men reruns, and they'll throw something out there. Often, they'll throw things out there, and I'm like, if that was a brand new show today, that wouldn't fly.
Yeah,
that would definitely be the big C, canceled.
Cancel. You're canceled. I cancel you.
Yeah, exactly. You can't cancel me. So on the last 2 segments, we talked about, efficiency and productivity as, kind of a means to get ahead, stay on top of your not just your work week, but your goals, and how to also get some of your time back in addition to protecting your time from the time bandit. And then we talked about how your diet really made a difference, as well as your discipline for riding your bike on a regular basis, not talking yourself out of it, but actually going with it and embracing it, and sometimes forcing yourself to do it, to which then you're glad you did afterwards. And then you talked about your eating plan and how you just felt better by changing up your diet, or actually, if I recall, you went back to kind of a diet that your family had more or less embraced when you were on your farm, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was.
Or did you tweak it?
It was such a progression. Yeah, you might say it was maybe kind of an echo of that, because it was one thing in the sort of halcyon days of that sustainable living was we were eating a lot of whole foods. It was meat, and it was potatoes, and it was veggies, and they weren't processed. They were given what we gave them. We didn't use pesticides. My mom used 2 kids with idle hands to keep the bugs and all that stuff off the So yeah, I think I was able to lean on that a good bit and go, okay, this at least kind of like squares me off. This is something that's familiar, and I know about this. And, and then I'd learn like, well, certain foods make me feel a certain way. And again, this is like, as I aged, my body needed different things. And I cut out pork, cut out beef over time. And we're talking like 5-year stretches, and then I was just all chicken and fish. That was pretty much primarily it, with the occasional, bacon. And still, I just wanted to feel better. I know I just had this snapshot of the best healthy version of me from when I was around like 22, 23. I mean, serious, or 18 to 24, that demographic where you're young and dumb, and you can run for 80 miles and run 10 more.
Yes. And stay up for 48 hours straight and not even break a sweat.
Yeah. And I mean, I know that's unrealistic to try to manufacture that. And, when you're twice as old, but there was a spirit there that I was really like, I didn't want to feel old. I didn't want to, nobody wants to become old, but you can't control that. But I didn't want to look or feel like an old man. And so I knew, and I know this, a lot of our problems are, saying it again, what we shove in our mouth and what we do or don't do with our body, right? It's we have so much control over that. And so cutting out meat wasn't it wasn't for the animals.
Yeah.
They're cute, but they're here to be chomped on.
Yeah.
It's just the way things are stacked up. It was for me. It was 100% for me, and I wanted to be the best version of me. And so it wasn't this like, oh, meat bad, vegetable good. It was just this experimentation. And so when you stop eating chicken, there's a big gaping hole, right? And where do you transfer that satiation? Where do you find satisfaction? And you just got to try new things, you know. And I'll say, this is my own opinion, trying to eat something that's pretending to be chicken, that's a plant, that's not going to do it for you. It's more likely going to come in the form of heartier vegetables. I mean, and knowing what is in these vegetables. I remember I asked somebody, I was like, hey, do you like broccoli? And like, without missing a beat, with ranch was the response. And I'm like, no, but more about broccoli. Can we get back to broccoli? I was asking you if you liked broccoli, because everything tastes good with ranch on it. So you get a sense of where people are coming from, you know, with the way they see food and their likings and dislikes. So me filling the chicken void, I feel so silly talking about this, but like, was seek out vegetable, non-meat and non-processed. These are the things you're trying to get away from that give you the bad gut feels. Try new stuff that is vegetables and fruits. And it's amazing. It's been a really fun adventure. And you know what? I'll come clean. The hardest thing for me to eliminate was cheese, or the plant-based likeness of cheese. Cheese is its own food group. Let's just admit that.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And it's an essential one if you ask me.
Yeah, exactly. It's part of a stable diet, or whatever you want to call it. And there's a few processed, you know, and I'm not strangely like, the rules aren't too strict around it, but I do try to not eat a lot of processed foods. But these plant-based cheeses, man, they fill the gap. Like,
I might have to try one of them.
Yeah, it's hard to just completely walk away from cheese. It's like a bad boyfriend or a bad girlfriend.
Well, and you mentioned about filling the void with chicken, you know, with vegetables, and I would think that there are also vegetables that are pretty meaty, like mushrooms come to mind as a meaty vegetable.
And high in protein, yeah.
Yeah, so you can, you know, I mean, let's look at chicken parmesan, right? You can have chicken parmesan, or you can have eggplant parmesan.
Right.
You know, and an eggplant's kind of meaty too in the way that it's presented on a parmesan, right? So if somebody was to be interested in, you know, maybe not full on vegan or but do want to make some lifestyle changes, and we both know that if you do something too much, too drastic, it's not going to stick, right? So, you know, much in the same vein as the, you know, the productivity methodologies and what have you, what would you recommend for somebody to kind of, you know, that wants to feel better after they eat, they want to kind of change up their diet, but again, not overnight? What would you recommend for somebody to start out in a way that it has a good chance of sticking?
I think there's a couple ways you could go at it. One way would be, like, we all have, I feel like, a meal in the day that's our most important, or that we somehow assign importance to over the other 3 or 6, depending on how you eat. Like eating more of a vegan diet, I'm hungry a lot more often, right? And
that's important to know.
It is, because what you're ideally what you're creating is a really clean burning furnace. in your gut. So any clean, using a furnace and wood burning analogy, all that clean, unprocessed, non-meat food is like a dry log, a nice dry log, and it's just going to burn right up. Versus throwing a big, wet log on the fire, and it's just going to kind of smolder for about 6 hours and smoke, and it might burn, but it's going to need some help. So typically get hungry a lot more often, and I have no guilt about that. Like I enjoy eating for the most part. The way my life is structured now, it's more of a utility. You just eat to not be hungry. But I do enjoy it. It's not a burden. I look forward to certain meals. But anyway, getting back to answering the question, maybe start with the meal or meals that are kind of least important in your day. Maybe they're the utility meals. Try going vegan during those. That way you won't feel slighted if you're unhappy with how you feel after. You're like, whoa, I'm super gassy after eating, a vegan breakfast. And it's simple. It's stuff you already eat. It might be oatmeal. Look, some people are, what do you want to call it? Extremists. Those exist in every faction, right?
Yes.
To me, honey falls into the vegan sort of spectrum. Yeah,
okay.
Bees slobbered all over it and chewed on it and spit it into some holes, and we went and harvested it. But it's just bee spit, It's not. It is what it is. Just like tea is dirty water. It is.
Okay. All right.
So
Thanks for ruining honey for me, but okay, we'll go with that.
Well, knowing where your food comes from. I feel like, those Peruvian women that chew on like sugar cane and then spit it into a bucket, and they make this kind of like fermented beer or something, like in the Andes. No?
Okay.
Yeah. No. Yeah, I think they were inspired by the bees. Where was I? So that way, if you have an unsatisfactory experience, you're not there's no resentment created. You're like, oh, damn it, that's not working. You've got your big important meal. You can go all out, go ham on it.
Okay.
But it's at least a way to dip your toe, Or the other way is completely inverted, is like take the meal that you often feel the most regret around, the one where you're like, you get a little too wild.
Okay.
And just completely.
Like a buffet lunch or something.
Yeah, completely supplement that with a very hearty vegan meal and just compare how you feel. And it might not take the first time. Your body's going to have all that stuff still kind of flowing around. It might take a week of doing it. Give it time. And it's specific to the person, where you're at mentally in your life, your body type, your bloodline and heritage, your lifestyle. It's all very specific. So I'm trying not to be prescriptive. But to me, it was just like a decade and a half of this progression.
And I would say that if anyone does doubt the effectiveness of, an eating plan, like you say, an eating plan that leaves you perpetually hungry, which means you're always trying to satisfy that. So you're always eating. You're probably grazing throughout the day to some degree, right?
Well, at first I was. I'll be clear, and I know that I wasn't. At first I was just like eating and eating and eating, but then you establish a norm, and it's like 3 squares now with a couple snacks in between. Yeah.
Okay. Now, even with that though, you have lost a really healthy amount of weight. Again, I didn't see you as overweight before, but you were saying you're borderline obese, and you have gotten down to a weight that you hadn't seen since your 20s, or was it high school?
I hadn't seen this weight since I was training for a marathon. And
gotcha.
These were in the later days of training. So, where you're jogging up to 16 miles in prep. And then on the weekends, you're doing light stuff just to keep in the habit. Yeah, I did. I lost about 30 pounds.
30 pounds. And did you ever like pass out on the trail because you didn't have enough nutrition,
No, hell
enough,
no.
enough nutrients in your body and enough fuel?
No, nope, not at
No.
all. And it doesn't have to be supplemented, with like all these supplemental waters or, powder supplements or anything. But I'll say after doing one of those workouts, there's some vegan chocolate, plant-based protein powder,
Okay.
banana, ice, almond milk, maybe some peanut butter. You're having a rockin' smoothie after one of those. Like that's the reward. And it feels indulgent, but it's all plant-based.
I'm not a vegan, and that still sounds good to me. I mean, that sounds really good.
Keep some frozen cherries and have a cherry chocolate smoothie after. It's, it's all there. And it's so easy now. We just have options galore,
That's good to know, because I think some eating plans are off-putting because either it's hard to find what you need to stay with it, or the food that you would need to stay with it is so damn expensive that it's cheaper just to be on that fast food binge. Just because, a organic head of lettuce is going to cost you $8, whereas, a double cheeseburger is going to cost you $3, I mean,
well, and fast food is deliberately designed that way. I'm gonna shit on it some more.
Yeah.
It's made out of yoga mats and horse meat. I mean, of course, I'm going to have like strong opinions, right? And I'm just halfway fucking around, but it's specifically designed to be cheap and addictive.
I learned the other day how you can tell if someone's a vegan. Do you know how to tell if someone's a vegan?
Mm-mm.
They'll tell you.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. They leave. Hey, you want to know if someone's a recovering alcoholic? Man, they will preach and preach. They're preaching their gospel, man.
Yeah.
I worked with a guy who was vegan, and at the time I was full on omnivore. This was like 7 years ago, and I had mentioned something about veal, and he basically jumped my shit. He's like, "Don't you know how they're treated?" I'm like, yeah, but they're delicious, And look, I grew up, like I said, you're petting a goat yesterday or a pig or a chicken or a rabbit or a duck, and you're eating it today. That was just very real. And I'm deeply scarred from it. No, I just understand where this stuff comes from. And there's no mystery. There's nothing brutally bad about it. It was a sustainable lifestyle, which kicks the shit out of, like, have you ever seen how some of the mass-produced chicken
Yes.
Yeah, it's we can deny ourselves that, here I go, I'm preaching. You can deny yourself the truth. Or you can live in it and it'll set you free.
I just want to know, though, if you're friendly with a goat or a pig one day and it's on your dinner table the next, didn't that impact all your relationships?
Oh man, it probably does. You're just gonna die.
Yeah.
Why would I even talk to you?
You're just tomorrow's dinner, pal.
Yeah. There's probably some residual psychology in there that screws with all my relationships.
Should we check on your wife and daughter on a regular basis?
Yeah, you probably should. I probably need to flesh that out, but it used to mess with my sister more.
Did it?
And being the younger jerk brother, I leaned into that hard. I won't even. It's callous and it's horrible sibling stuff, but I'd have her crying.
Well, it's your sacred duty as a younger brother,
Yeah, I was up to task on it.
Now, one thing going back to the lifestyle of, and different eating plans, one thing I've noticed, and maybe you can clarify this, is that my wife and I, we embrace low carb, and I double that with intermittent fasting, so that when I am eating, I'm not introducing sugars into my body that my body would have to go into overdrive to process.
Right.
But one thing we noticed when going low carb is we were having withdrawals from sugar, but also processed foods like breads and pastas. We were actually having actual withdrawals. When you go, into a vegan lifestyle of eating, do you have any similar withdrawal symptoms or any similar effects that are short term, but that somebody might think, oh my God, I can't do this anymore because this is going to last forever, but it's really short term?
If that's happened to me, I wasn't aware of it.
Really?
And I think it's specific to my body type, and I'll give you an example. Or my blood type, or whatever, my astrological sign. I drink coffee every day. It's part of my morning ritual. It's sacred to me. If I don't have coffee, my body doesn't give a shit. I don't, caffeine, it's a drug.
Yes.
Sugar could be categorized as a drug. My wife, if she's not a heavy tea drinker, a heavy coffee drinker, she just wants her 1 cup of tea a day. She would experience little, like she has you could say she has a sensitive system. So I think knowing yourself like that, I also could drink, and this was in my, 20s, my raging 20s, I could drink a can of Coke and go to bed. Some people go, I'd be bouncing off the walls. I just didn't have a sensitive system.
Right.
Which sounds, what's the word? Conflicting or counter to the things I'm talking about, because my diet is the end result of me listening to my body. Maybe my body wasn't screaming it. I really had to lean in and listen. I had to pay attention. Like knowing, all right, this is going to get, I don't want it to get weird, but inflammation is one of the biggest causes of disease in our bodies, and probably with the animals and stuff, but I don't listen to their doctors. Knowing when your body has, recognizing when your body has some inflammation, it's pretty important.
Yes.
But we're not all doctors, and then we don't all listen, and our body doesn't scream it. It just kind of whispers it in the wind. And if you're not paying attention, because understandably you're not, you're just going through your day, overcommitting yourself to other people's needs, you're not going to hear it. You're not going to act on it. And your body's going to kind of go through its cycle of trying to handle this inflammation.
It's being drowned out. And it's funny that you mentioned inflammation, because one of the biggest benefits of intermittent fasting is that it helps to reduce inflammation. Yeah. And so when you're talking about, eating a cleaner, diet, and then intermittent fasting is the removal of, foods, not removal of the amount of time you spend eating food. You compress it into a window, and if you're outside that window, you just simply don't take in food. You take in water, definitely. You don't dehydrate yourself, but the whole purpose of it is to reduce inflammation, which obviously has to do with a lot of things. If you catch colds a lot, it could have to do with inflammation in certain areas of your body that would normally fight those things off before they even manifest. You see, obviously your belly fat, that's inflammation. So there's a lot that you can gain health-wise from reducing inflammation, and however you go about it, whether it's eating clean or whether it's intermittent fasting or, doing a low carb type keto deal, which would also serve to help reduce inflammation, because you're using, protein, and you're leveraging ketones in a way that feeds your body, that in a healthier way that feeds your body than glucose ever could, right? Yeah. So maybe the common denominator here is that inflammation. So if you're listening and you're thinking, man, I want to do something different, I just want to feel better, maybe investigate what might work best for you in terms of reducing that inflammation, right? So if it's vegan, if it's keto, if it's intermittent fasting, if it's vegetarian, whatever works for you to help reduce inflammation, I think that's right there, the one target that if you can hit, you'll see success of some, in some way for you.
Yeah, and to be thorough, we've talked about reducing inflammation through abstinence, but there's actually foods that help fight inflammation. Going back to our friend the pineapple ring from earlier in the show, in this episode, that's just one of hundreds or thousands. I don't know. I'm not an expert, but you can actually take in whole foods that will help reduce your own inflammation. Again, this is not medical advice. I'm the furthest thing from a doctor, and it depends on you specifically.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, certainly do your research, consult your doctor, because when you do change your way of eating, your body will experience some kind of shock, whether you notice it or not. If you don't notice it like Graham, or you do notice it like me when I was having my withdrawals, your body will experience some kind of a shock because you're changing up what it's used to. And as we know, any kind of change is disruptive, right? So definitely approach it with caution. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Remind me again how long you were fasting for.
So it varies for me. Nowadays, when I fast, I will eat within probably an 8-hour window. So I won't eat until dinner most times. So it's not even an 8-hour window. It's probably more like a 4 or 6 hour window that I'll eat. So I won't eat until dinner time. I'll eat dinner, and I'll even have a little dessert. Might even have, a Pepsi or a Coke with my dinner, and that is kind of frowned upon. But hey, if you want it sustainable, you got to make it work for you.
You do. Yep.
And so then once I'm done eating for the night, I don't get a snack right before bed. So I'll stop eating, maybe a couple hours before bed. And then the next morning I'll get up, I'll have my coffee with stevia and sugar-free coffee creamer. Which is low in the carb count. So if I can stay under 5 grams of carbs, I'm not breaking my fast. Okay. So I'll have coffee, and then I'll have one of those sugar-free, iced teas that come in the bottle. The Lipton bottles are sugar-free, no carbs, or I'll drink flavored Propel water, which has electrolytes, or just plain old water throughout the day. And then, like you said, the one important meal, I'll just go all in. I'll have what I want and as much as I want until I'm full.
You're going 16 to 20 hour stretches.
16 to 20 hour stretches. When I really feel like I need to shock my body in a good way, I'll do a 48-hour fast. It's not as hard as it sounds if you've done it at least once before, but you've got to do it very carefully. You have, like you had mentioned, you really have to listen to your body. You're going to get headaches. You're going to get dizziness. So if you're going to do it at a time where, maybe on a weekend where you don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to really focus on a lot because you are going to lose some focus and concentration, dizzy spells. You might even get sleepy and just kind of take a nap because you're going to feel kind of lethargic. But once you come out the other side of that, you're going to feel energetic because your body's then releasing ketones. So your brain is going to feel a lot sharper. I mean, you're going to feel like you're on some kind of a super drug because the ketones flowing through your body are just like working wonders for you. Okay. And so when you come out the other side, although you might have had a hardship in the middle of it, when you come out the other side, you're going to feel, a lot better. But again, consult your doctor before you do something that extreme. So I'll go 2 days, 48 hours if I really want to shock the body. Maybe I've kind of been off the wagon for a little bit and I want to get back into it. I'll go the 48 hours to announce to my body, hey, we're back and we're going back to fasting.
Here's the deal, you. Well, as you were explaining that, it's really struck me how different our approaches are because I feel like, we can rise to any occasion. We're mighty human beings. not every moment of the day, but I just think about that amount of fasting. And I'm like, oh God, I just couldn't. I know somewhere inside me I could.
Mm-hmm.
And so knowing yourself, I've chosen a kind of like a steady drip of this, and this, like constantly being rewarded with, whether it's exercise or clean diet. And that's what works for me. And you're doing something that it sounds like works for you.
It does when I do it consistently. Even when I'm not consistently, I mean, consistently. There have been times where I'll get on the scale and I'll be like, whoa, I'm not danger zone. I didn't like gain back everything that I had lost. But if I do see it trending upwards, then I'll definitely do a more consistent fast. Like I'll do it for like 3 days where all I eat is dinner,
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to the intermittent fasting, during the spring and the summer, when we go on our morning bike rides, I will ride on a fasted state. So I have nothing in my body from the night before. And after my body has finished digesting the food I ate for dinner, it can then focus on repairing other parts of the body that need attention. But your body tends to take most of its energy and most of its resources to digest food. So if it's not being taken up by doing that, it can actually repair other parts of your body. And that's when you release good hormones for your body. So, your brain cells, and your body cells, your, diseases get fought off easier, all these good things. So when we go on our morning bike rides, I ride on in a fasted state. And by the time we're done with the bike ride, I'll take a shower and I'll drink a bunch of water, after the bike ride. And one time we went on a bike ride, Graham, and I kid you not, I came home, drank a bunch of water, so I'm putting stuff in my body, but it's water. And I take a shower and I go step on the scale. I lost 5 pounds in one day.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And it's not water weight because, when you're, it's actual fat because your body is burning the fat for fuel instead of the food you just ate. The food you just ate is glucose, right? So if you're in a fasted state.
Are you talking about losing 5 pounds from, like you went to bed and then after the ride that morning?
Yeah, from the day before. Yeah, if I weighed the day before, I fasted that day, ate dinner, then the next morning you and I go on a bike ride before I put anything in my body, and even after drinking water, again, you're adding weight when you drink water. You would think it'd be, wouldn't be as drastic of a weight loss. So I can only imagine that if I don't drink water and weigh myself before I drink any water, what that would look like. But 5 pounds after drinking water, to me, to me, that's just like amazing. And because I am overweight, so fasting doesn't work for everyone. If you're lean, there's nothing really, you can fast to maintain, but if you're lean, you don't really have to do a lot of fasting because you have no fat for your body to feed on. But a guy who's, really overweight like me, I've got fuel for days, you see. So realistically, I could go, 15, 30 days without food, not without water, but I could go 15, 30 days without food realistically because I have enough fat for my body to live on, okay, for a very long time.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, it's amazing when you start getting that. It's amazing for so many reasons. To one, think about being that sort of unaware and disconnected from your body, like not seeing your mind and body as like two systems that are trying to work closely together, to then dive in and start kind of making these lifestyle adjustments, these diet choices that have typically positive outcomes that are very specific to the individual. I think that's it's along with knowing where your food comes and how your body reacts to it. And yeah, it's important. It's important.
Yeah. When I rejoined the Army, I lost 80 pounds doing low carb. And I was also working out. The apartment complex I lived in had a gym. So I was working out on all the Nautilus equipment. Well, I would alternate it. So I was working out 6 days a week while eating low carb. And then I would give myself 1 day each week where I wouldn't work out and I would eat whatever I wanted, anything, and as much as I had wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So spaghetti, candy, breakfast cereals, whatever I wanted, I would eat, and as much as I would want. And then the other 6 days, I was eating low carb and working out, and I lost 80 pounds doing that. Now introduce the intermittent fasting, and what I know of me is that when it comes to food, other things I can have moderation, but when it comes to food, I have a very hard time with moderation. So with low carb, I can eat more of what's acceptable in low carb without having to measure or limit. So I can just eat until I feel like it's time to stop, right? And sometimes I can, eat until I feel stuffed, because that my body doesn't know when to shut that off. And yet it doesn't have as detrimental effect as if I ate until I was stuffed eating, burgers and cheesecake and, and ice cream, right? Now, when you introduce the fasting, it's funny because you'd mentioned that you should listen to your body, and I agree. But when it comes to fasting, it's almost the opposite. You want to ignore your body because
yeah, shut up down there.
Well, and that's the thing, because your what you think are hunger pangs are not. Hunger pangs, there's true hunger, and then there's perceived hunger. Okay? The perceived hunger is a hormone called ghrelin that you actually can train. So if you eat, breakfast, between 8 and 9 o'clock every day, and you eat lunch between 12 and 1 every day, and you eat dinner between 5 and 6 every day, you're training that ghrelin hormone that if you go beyond that, it's going to start grumbling your stomach. And you think that's hunger pangs, and it's going to make a lot of noise because you trained the ghrelin to say, hey, time to eat. Why aren't we eating? You told me, every day for the last 3 months that we eat between 8 and 9, right? And between 12 and 1 and between 5 and 6. And yet there's no food.
Yeah.
Why? So it's going to make noise to remind you. So you can retrain it. So you almost have to ignore the ghrelin, ignore the rumblings, because that's not true hunger. And then as you get into and used to intermittent fasting, you can do two things. Number one, you can recognize it. And then secondly, it doesn't appear as regularly anymore, because the ghrelin, your body is training the ghrelin to say, yeah, we could eat whenever. You don't know when. You don't know me. Right. So, we're going to eat when I say we eat. And that kind of goes away.
Yeah. Just sit back.
Yeah. So don't mistake.
You get what you get.
Exactly. Yeah. So don't. So people think, oh, I've got a grumble in my tummy, I'm going hungry. You're not. You're not.
Yeah. You got to push past. Yeah. You got to push past that cushy first world lifestyle you created.
Well,
for yourself.
yes, exactly. So so that's important, but it's again, consult your physician. It's knowing when to listen and when to not listen, because sometimes they're fake signals, right? They're signals, that are made to make you think one thing when really it's another. The reality is another. So
right. Yeah. An important delineation.
Exactly. Well, I think, we touched on some good things today. We talked about productivity and efficiency, right? Methodologies, right? On how to approach that efficiency, right? Some are very structured. Some are a little more loosely organized. And in my opinion, the best ones that you can adopt are the ones that come to you organically as a mixture of a lot of different things, and even things that you try and determine whether they work or don't work. And then get rid of those that don't. Then we talked about your bike rides along with your eating lifestyle, being, vegan in terms of lifestyle, but also the benefits that it's given you. And then I think we touched on here on if you wanted to get started in veganism, some small changes you can make, and then do it gradually so you have a better chance of sticking with it. And then we, of course, because I couldn't be outmatched. I had to talk about intermittent fasting and low carb as yet another alternative to a healthier eating lifestyle that essentially achieves something very similar to veganism, and that is to reduce inflammation, which seems to be the root source of a lot of ailments, whether they be colds and flus or whether they be, achy knees, cancer, bad skin, acne. All of those things do result from inflammation. So I think we've given you, quite a few options to look into if you want to feel better on a day-to-day basis, which then can also help you to achieve your best.
Yeah, and we also talked about how our elders have a superhero ability to kill our dreams with one
with
question.
Superhuman strength. Yes.
Yeah, and how to maybe stop the cycle, break the chain, and help guide our up and comers and our juniors with leadership through conversation. Let them own their decisions, but just kind of help them, give them those tools, and do it in a way where hopefully they'll keep coming to you when they have a problem, because their problems only get bigger. And if they're keeping that too close to their chest, it can be detrimental.
Well, and also let's not be threatened by the success of our younger generation. Let's encourage them to succeed well beyond our successes, because that's how we truly do build a better world. And let's get away from saying no when somebody says they want to do this or that. Instead of saying no, encourage them to think about how they would get there. Because if everything was no, we wouldn't have, electric vehicles like Tesla. We wouldn't have, computers like Apple and Microsoft. If everybody lived in a world of no, or, hey, that's out of your league or out of your grasp, there's no reason you should be looking into that. We really owe it to not just ourselves, but to our future generation to get away from that and instead saying, well, how can I help you with that?
That's right. And they can have their own "how did that work out" story.
Exactly. So I think that's our higher mission, is to help everybody think of a "how did that work out" scenario that was a successful one that worked out. So
yeah, man, good stuff.
All right, very good stuff. So I think that's it for today, and wish you a great rest of your weekend there, Graham.
Yeah, it's the end of the weekend. It's the end of February almost. Yeah, gingerly stepping into the last month of Q1, if you can believe it or not.
Oh boy, time is flying already. But that's what happens when you get older. But hopefully you get out and get a bike ride in there, Graham. Let me know how it goes if you do. And
I'm going to do it.
You out there?
I'm going to
do it, man. I know you are. So yeah, I can't wait to hear how that worked out. And for the rest of you out there, let's talk next week. Looking forward to it, and y'all have a great week.
For more HDTWO content and the latest show updates, like and follow our Facebook page, Instagram account, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at HDTWO Show. Don't forget to tell your friends.